My life had always been measured in numbers. Deadlines, revenue, market shares, expansion plans. Every minute of my day was accounted for, every decision weighed, every weakness hidden behind a tailored suit, and a calm voice that could close billion-dollar deals without ever rising above control. I was the CEO of Hartwell Industries, and people called me cold, ruthless. They had no idea how lonely that kind of power could be. The first time I saw Lucien Ashford, I was standing in my glass-walled office on the 42nd floor, looking down at the city like it belonged to me. He had just been hired as my executive assistant, and I had expected the usual. Nervousness, too much perfume, forced confidence, or the blank obedience of someone desperate to impress. Instead, he walked in with quiet grace, a black folder in one hand and the faintest hint of a smile on his lips. "Mr. Hartwell," he said, his voice smooth and low, "your 9 o'clock meeting has been moved to 9:30. I've already prepared the revised briefing notes." I turned from the window and studied him. He was beautiful in a way that almost felt unfair. Pale skin, dark hair falling just enough over his forehead to look effortless, sharp features softened by eyes that seemed too old for his face. He wore a charcoal suit perfectly fitted to his lean frame, but there was something about him that made the room feel quieter, as if the air itself had learned to hold its breath. "You've been here 10 minutes, I said. "Yes." "And you've already rearranged my schedule." "Yes." I should have been annoyed. Instead, I found myself staring. Lucien met my gaze without hesitation, as if he were used to powerful men trying to intimidate him and had already decided they would fail. "I take it you approve?" he asked. It was the first time in years anyone had spoken to me that way. I should have dismissed him. I should have kept him at a professional distance. Instead, I heard myself say, "We'll see if you can keep up." A small smile touched his mouth. "I usually do." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Lucien became impossible to ignore. He anticipated everything before I asked. He placed files in front of me before I realized I needed them. He remembered my schedule, my preferences, my dislikes, even the exact temperature I preferred the conference room to be. He never made mistakes, and yet I became increasingly aware of him. The soft sound of his footsteps in the hallway, the way his fingers moved when he turned pages, the faint trace of something cool and expensive in the air whenever he passed me, like rain on stone and winter at midnight. I found myself watching him far too often, pretending it was because I was reviewing his work. One night, around 11, I was still in my office, staring at a contract I had already read 3 times. Lucien entered without knocking, carrying a cup of coffee and a stack of documents. "I didn't order anything," I said. "You didn't eat dinner either," he replied. I looked up sharply. He set the coffee down on my desk. "You'll get a headache if you keep working like this. I don't take advice from my employees." "And yet," he said mildly, "you're still staring at the coffee." I should have been irritated. Instead, I almost laughed. It was a dangerous thing, that little shift in him. His quiet wit, his steady eyes, the way he acted as if he knew me well enough to challenge me. No one challenged me. No one stayed long enough to matter. Lucien was becoming a problem. The problem worsened the night of the investors' gala. I had expected him to remain at my side the way all assistants did at public events. Silent, efficient, invisible. Instead, he stood beside me in a black suit that made him look like a shadow carved into human form, calm and composed beneath the glittering chandeliers and watchful eyes of 100 wealthy guests. Every time someone approached me, he already knew their name, their position, their reason for coming. He leaned in to murmur the information so softly only I could hear it, and with every brief brush of his breath near my ear, my attention scattered. At one point, an obnoxious board member made a crude joke about Lucien's appearance. Before I could even respond, Lucien smiled politely and said, "I'm afraid your sense of humor is as outdated as your company forecasts, sir." The man blinked, stunned. I had to look away to hide the sudden curve of my mouth. "Was that necessary?" I asked when we were alone for a moment near the balcony. "Yes," Lucien said. You were about to make this political. I always make things political. That is precisely why someone should stop you. I turned toward him, ready to tell him off, but the words died halfway in my throat. The city lights reflected in his eyes, and for a moment he looked almost unreal, beautiful, distant, and unbearably lonely. Why do you look at me like that? I asked quietly. Lucien's expression changed, though only for a second. Like what? Like you're waiting for something. His face softened, but he answered with care. Perhaps I am. There was something in his tone that made my pulse jump. Before I could say more, the balcony door opened behind us and another guest arrived. The moment shattered. Lucien stepped back into the light of the ballroom, and the strange atmosphere vanished as if it had never existed at all. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started noticing other things after that. How he never seemed tired even after long hours. How he disliked mirrors, always turning away from them without seeming to realize it. How the light from the sunrise meetings made him subtly tense, while moonlight seemed to settle over him like a second skin. And his hands. Cold. Always cold. One evening, while reviewing a report, I found myself reaching for his wrist before I thought better of it. The contact was brief, but the chill of his skin startled me. Lucien stilled. So you are human after all? I murmured before I could stop myself. His eyes lifted to mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he gently withdrew his hand. You sound disappointed. I sound curious. That's more dangerous. The air between us changed after that. It grew heavier, more intimate, as if some invisible line had been crossed and neither of us knew how to step back. A week later, we were trapped in the office late again by a thunderstorm. Rain lashed against the windows in silver sheets, and the whole tower seemed suspended above the world. The power flickered once, then twice. Lucien stood by the window, his reflection faint in the dark glass. I watched him more than the storm. You can go home, I said. I know. Then why are you still here? He turned slowly. Because you are. The answer was simple, but something about it made my chest tighten. I stood and crossed the room before I could reconsider. Lucien watched me approach, his expression unreadable. For once, he didn't speak. Neither did I. Up close, he looked even more beautiful than he did from across the room. My hand rose almost on instinct, hovering near his cheek as if I were afraid he might disappear. Lucien did not move away. Damien, he said softly, and hearing my name from his mouth nearly undid me. I kissed him before I could think. It was not careful. It was not strategic. It was not the kind of thing a man like me should have done with his assistant in a dark office during a storm. It was a mistake, reckless and inevitable and completely unlike anything I had ever allowed myself. For one breathless moment he froze. Then Lucien kissed me back. His lips were cooler than mine, but his response was immediate, fierce in a way that made my entire body tighten. I had expected hesitation, surprise, maybe even rejection. Instead, his hands slid into my hair, steadying me as the kiss deepened, and I felt something inside me give way. The world outside the office disappeared. There was only him. Only the taste of rain on the air and the quiet sound he made when I kissed him again. When we finally parted, we were both breathing harder than we should have been. Lucien's forehead rested lightly against mine. His eyes were half-lidded, his mouth parted, and for the first time since I had met him, he looked less composed, less controlled, more human. That was unwise, he whispered. I gave a breathless laugh. You kissed me back. Yes, he said, and the faintest smile curved his lips. I did. My hand remained at his waist, not yet ready to let him go. Then say I made a mistake. He looked at me for a long, searching moment. I won't lie to you, he said quietly. Not about that. My heart was still racing when he stepped back. That should have been the end of the night. But it wasn't. Because as Lucien turned toward the door, the light from the hallway caught his face in a way that made him look almost translucent, and for just an instant, I saw something impossible flash in his eyes. Something old, dark, and hungry. Then it was gone. He slipped out into the corridor, leaving me alone in the storm with the taste of his kiss still burning on my mouth. I stood there for a long time, staring at the closed door. I didn't know it yet. I didn't know the truth. I didn't know that the man I had just kissed was hiding a secret older than my entire bloodline. I only knew one thing for certain. For the first time in my life, I was no longer interested in staying safe. I was interested in Lucien Ashford, and I was already falling too deep to turn back. The morning after I kissed Lucien, I convinced myself it had been a lapse in judgment. I had spent 31 years building walls around my heart. One impulsive kiss wasn't supposed to change that. It did. The moment I stepped into my office, Lucien was already there, arranging files with the same calm elegance he always carried. His charcoal suit was immaculate, his dark hair neatly combed, and his expression gave nothing away. "Good morning, Mr. Hartwell." There it was again, the professional tone. As if he hadn't held me against the office window while rain hammered the glass only hours before. "Morning," I answered, unable to hide the disappointment in my voice. He looked up briefly. For the first time since we'd met, a faint blush warmed his pale cheeks before disappearing just as quickly. "Your coffee is on the desk. So is my schedule? Revised twice. You've been busy." I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. Our eyes met. For a second, the entire office became silent. Then the elevator chimed, employees filled the hallway, and the moments slipped away. The next several days were torture. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was right. Lucien remained the perfect assistant, but whenever our hands brushed while exchanging documents, neither of us pulled away immediately. When we rode the elevator alone, silence felt warmer than conversation. One evening I caught him smiling while watching me struggle with an impossibly complicated presentation. "You think this is funny?" "A little." "I pay you too much." "You do." "You aren't helping." "I know." I couldn't help laughing. His smile widened. It was beautiful. Not practiced. Not polite. Real. I realized then that I would do almost anything just to see that smile again. Our first date happened by accident. At least that's what I kept telling myself. A client canceled our dinner meeting at the last minute, leaving us standing outside one of the city's finest restaurants. "I suppose we should go back," I said. Lucien looked at the reservation. "They've already prepared the table. So? It would be rude to waste it." I narrowed my eyes. "You're manipulating me." "A little." I laughed. "Fine." Dinner lasted nearly 3 hours. For the first time, we weren't CEO and assistant. We were simply Damien and Lucien. He loved classical music. He secretly collected antique novels. He enjoyed walking through quiet gardens after midnight because the world felt peaceful then. "You always say midnight," I noticed. "You noticed." "I notice everything about you." The words escaped before I could stop them. Lucien lowered his eyes. His smile became almost shy. "I've noticed everything about you too." After dinner, we walked through a riverside park illuminated by old street lamps. The city lights reflected across the water like scattered stars. The night was cool. Lucien walked beside me with his hands in his pockets. "You've been hiding something," I finally said. He stopped walking. "I know. I don't want your secrets to become walls between us." His expression turned unexpectedly sad. "They aren't walls." "What are they?" "They're chains." Before I could ask what he meant, thunder echoed across the sky. Rain began falling. We hurried beneath the shelter of a centuries-old gazebo overlooking the river. Water surrounded us like shimmering curtains. Lucien laughed softly as droplets clung to his hair. "You look happier," I whispered. "I haven't felt this alive in a very long time." I reached for his face. He leaned into my hand without hesitation. I don't care what you're hiding, I told him. I care about you. His eyes shimmered with emotions I couldn't understand. Then he kissed me. Slowly. Tenderly. There was no urgency this time. Only affection. Only warmth. Only two hearts trying to memorize a moment that felt too perfect to last. When the kiss ended, he rested his forehead against mine. I wish tonight could last forever. It can. He smiled sadly. No, Damien. It can't. Everything changed 3 nights later. I woke just after midnight to a phone call from building security. Mr. Hartwell. The guard sounded terrified. We need you to come to the office immediately. What happened? We found blood. By the time I reached Hartwell Industries, police lights painted the skyscraper blue and red. The executive floor had been evacuated. One of our employees had been attacked in the underground parking garage. He was alive. Barely. 2 tiny puncture wounds marked his neck. The police suspected an unusual weapon. I knew nothing about wounds like that, until I remembered something. Lucien hadn't come to work that day. No calls. No messages. Nothing. My heart sank. His apartment overlooked the old district where centuries-old buildings still stood between modern towers. The lights were off. The front door was unlocked. Lucien. No answer. I walked inside. The apartment was elegant but strangely empty. No family photographs. No electronic devices beyond the essentials. Books lined every wall. Most were older than any I'd ever seen. Some looked hundreds of years old. Then I heard breathing. Weak. Painful. Following the sound downstairs, I discovered a hidden cellar. Candles flickered against ancient stone walls. Symbols were carved into the floor. And in the center, Lucien knelt alone. His white shirt was stained with blood. Not someone else's. His own. Lucien. He looked up. His eyes widened with horror. No! He tried to cover his face. Damien! You shouldn't be here. I rushed toward him. He backed away. Stop! His voice wasn't gentle anymore. It sounded desperate. Please. Leave. I'm not leaving you. He looked directly at me, and everything I believed about the world shattered. His warm brown eyes had become brilliant crimson. Sharp fangs extended from his lips. The veins beneath his pale skin glowed like black branches beneath ice. He looked heartbreakingly beautiful, and utterly inhuman. I told you, he whispered through tears. My secrets were chains. I never wanted you to see this. For several endless seconds, neither of us moved. I should have been terrified. I should have run. Instead, I took one careful step forward, then another. Finally, I stood before him. Lucien trembled. I'm a monster. No. You don't understand. I've killed before. His confession echoed through the silent cellar. I've lived for centuries. I've watched everyone I loved grow old. I've buried them all. I promised myself. His voice broke. I promised I'd never love another human. Tears rolled down his cheeks. But then, you walked into my life. I gently cupped his face. His skin was ice cold, just like the first time I'd touched him. I finally understand. He closed his eyes. You should hate me. I don't. You should fear me. I can't. His crimson eyes opened slowly. You'll die one day. Then I'll spend every day before that loving you. He stared at me as though I'd spoken the impossible. I don't care if you're a vampire. I care that you're Lucien. His breathing became uneven. Damien. I love you. The words left my lips before fear could stop them. For the first time in centuries, Lucien smiled while crying. He leaned forward cautiously. as though afraid I'd disappear. Our foreheads touched. Then he kissed me. It wasn't passionate. It was fragile, filled with relief, with gratitude, with hope neither of us believed we deserved. When we finally separated, he whispered against my forehead, "You've just chosen the most dangerous love imaginable." I smiled through my own tears. "Then we'll survive it together." Outside, thunder shook the city. Far above us, hidden in the darkness of the rooftops, unseen crimson eyes watched through the rain. One voice whispered into the night, "The pureblood prince has fallen in love with a human." Another answered coldly, "Then the human must die." Neither Lucien nor I knew it yet. Our love story had just become a war. The night I learned Lucien was a vampire, my world should have fallen apart. Instead, it finally made sense. His cold hands, his sleepless nights, the sadness hidden behind every gentle smile. None of it frightened me anymore. It only made me wonder how much pain he had carried alone. The following morning, we stood together on the balcony of my penthouse as dawn painted the city gold. Lucien remained beneath the shade of the rooftop pavilion, careful to avoid the direct sunlight. "I should leave," he said quietly. "It will be safer." I shook my head. "No. They'll come for you because of me. Then let them." His crimson eyes softened. "You make impossible decisions sound easy." I smiled. "I've been a CEO for years." That earned a quiet laugh. The sound was worth every risk. Over the next few weeks, my life transformed into something no business school could have prepared me for. By day, I negotiated billion-dollar mergers. By night, I searched ancient archives, forgotten libraries, and encrypted historical databases for one thing: a cure. Every legend spoke of vampires differently. Some insisted they were cursed forever. Others claimed an ancient ritual called the Heart of Dawn could restore a vampire's humanity, but only if the ritual was completed by two souls bound by genuine love. Most scholars dismissed it as myth. I refused to. One evening, I found Lucien sitting alone in my library. Moonlight spilled across the floor, illuminating an old leather-bound journal in his hands. "What are you reading?" I asked. "My diary." "How old is it?" He smiled faintly. The first pages were written in 1694. I nearly dropped my coffee. "You've really lived that long?" "I wish I hadn't." He closed the journal gently. "I've watched kingdoms disappear. I've watched cities burn. I've forgotten more birthdays than I can remember." His voice became quieter. "But I've never forgotten the faces of the people I loved." I sat beside him. "And now?" He looked at me. "Now I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Losing you." Without thinking, I slipped my hand into his. His fingers were still cool, but they no longer felt distant. "They won't take me away from you. I won't let them." Lucien leaned his head against my shoulder. For several peaceful minutes, neither of us spoke. Sometimes silence said everything. A week later, my research led me to an elderly historian living in a secluded monastery nestled high in the mountains. Father Adrian welcomed us without surprise. "I've been expecting you." Lucien stiffened. "You know what I am?" The old priest smiled kindly. "I know what you carry." He opened a weathered manuscript covered in faded symbols. "The Heart of Dawn is real." My pulse quickened. "You've seen it?" "No. But my ancestors protected its history." He pointed to an ancient illustration. A glowing crystal rested between two hands. "The ritual demands three things: a vampire who willingly abandons immortality, a human whose love remains unshaken, and—" His expression darkened. "The crimson moon." Lucien's face lost all color. "No." Father Adrian nodded solemnly. "It rises only once every 100 years. "When?" The old priest looked directly at us. "In 6 months." Hope and fear collided inside me. For the first time, There was a chance. A real one. On the journey home, Lucien remained unusually quiet. Rain tapped gently against the train window as forests blurred past outside. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "I'm wondering if I deserve a second life." I turned toward him. "You do. I've taken lives. You've also saved countless others. I've made mistakes. So have I." He lowered his gaze. "I'm afraid becoming human won't erase my past." I gently lifted his chin until our eyes met. "It doesn't have to. It only has to give us a future." His eyes shimmered. Before anyone else in the nearly empty train carriage could notice, he leaned forward. His lips brushed mine in a soft, lingering kiss. It wasn't fueled by passion. It was filled with gratitude. When we separated, he rested his forehead against mine. I never imagined love could feel this peaceful. Neither did I. Our happiness didn't last long. Late one evening, as we returned to my penthouse, every light in the building suddenly went out. The emergency generators failed. The elevator froze between floors. An unnatural silence filled the tower. Lucien immediately stepped in front of me. "Stay behind me." "What is it?" "They've found us." The elevator doors groaned open on their own. Not because of electricity, because someone had forced them apart. 3 figures dressed in black cloaks stepped inside. Their eyes glowed crimson. Each carried silver blades engraved with ancient symbols. One of them smiled. "Prince Lucien." "It's been centuries." Lucien's voice became colder than I'd ever heard. "You shouldn't have come." The tallest vampire laughed. "Our queen sends her regards." "She wants her runaway prince returned." "I belong to no one." "You belong to your bloodline." The vampire's gaze shifted toward me. "So, this is the human." His smile widened. "No wonder you've forgotten your duty." Everything happened in seconds. The vampire lunged toward me. Before I could react, Lucien intercepted him. Steel clashed. The confined elevator exploded into chaos. Lucien moved with impossible speed, shielding me from every strike. I watched in disbelief as he fought not to kill, but only to protect. The battle ended when the attackers retreated into the darkness of the powerless hallway. Before disappearing, their leader spoke one final warning. "The Crimson Queen is coming herself. When she arrives, choose wisely. Your humanity, or you're human." The silence that followed felt heavier than the fight itself. Later that night, after the police dismissed the incident as a failed robbery, Lucien stood alone on my balcony overlooking the sleeping city. I wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "You always take care of me," he whispered. "You'd do the same." "I already have." He turned to face me. For the first time since we'd met, I saw fear in his eyes. Not for himself, but for me. "They'll never stop hunting us. Then we won't stop fighting." He smiled. "You really are impossible." "So I've been told." I slipped a simple silver ring into his hand. It wasn't an engagement ring. Not yet. It was engraved with 2 words. "Have hope." Lucien stared at it for a long moment before sliding it onto his finger. He looked at me with tears shining in his crimson eyes. "I've worn jewels from kings. I've owned crowns. But this," he intertwined his fingers with mine, "is the first gift that's ever felt priceless." I kissed him beneath the moonlight, slow and tender, as the city stretched endlessly below us. For a few precious moments, there were no vampires, no ancient curses, no impossible destinies. Only Damien and Lucien, only love. Far away, deep within a forgotten castle hidden beneath the mountains, a woman in a crimson gown opened her eyes. The air around her trembled with ancient power. "The heart of dawn has been found," she whispered. She smiled, revealing elegant fangs. "Prepare my carriage. If Prince Lucien wishes to become human, I'll make sure he never lives to see the sunrise. And with that command, a war centuries in the making finally began. I used to believe the hardest decisions in my life were made in boardrooms, choosing between billion-dollar investments, deciding the future of thousands of employees, negotiating with competitors who would smile while planning my downfall. I was wrong. The hardest decision I would ever make was far simpler. How far was I willing to go to save the man I loved? The answer came easily. As far as it took. The attack on the elevator changed everything. Lucien no longer left my side. Additional security surrounded Hartwell Tower, but both of us knew ordinary guards couldn't stop creatures that had survived for centuries. One evening, while reviewing financial reports, I looked up to find Lucien standing by the window, watching the rain. "You haven't smiled today," I said. He didn't turn around. "I'm remembering." "What?" "The last human I loved." Silence settled over the room. "I met him in France nearly 200 years ago. He was a painter who believed every sunrise was different. He grew old while I stayed exactly the same. His voice became quieter. I buried him with my own hands." I walked across the room and gently took his hand. "I'm not him." "I know. And you won't lose me without a fight." For the first time that day, he smiled. "You really do make impossible promises. I intend to keep them." 3 nights later, Father Adrian contacted us with urgent news. "The Crimson Queen has awakened." His voice trembled through the secure video call. "She has ruled the Pureblood clan for over 1,000 years. Lucien's expression darkened. "I thought she was sleeping." "So did everyone." Father Adrian unfolded an ancient map. "There is one place where neither humans nor vampires rule. The Sanctuary of Dawn. A neutral ground. If you want the Heart of Dawn, you'll have to negotiate with the Council of Elders before the Crimson Queen reaches them." I looked at Lucien. "When do we leave?" He answered without hesitation. "Tonight." The Sanctuary of Dawn lay hidden beneath snow-covered mountains, protected by ancient magic that concealed it from the modern world. The city was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Stone streets illuminated by glowing crystals. Gardens blooming beneath moonlight. Humans and supernatural beings walked side by side without fear. For the first time, I realized peace between our worlds had once existed. Perhaps it could again. The Council of Elders welcomed us into a circular chamber carved from white marble. 7 elders sat around an enormous stone table. Their oldest member studied Lucien carefully. "So, the lost prince returns." Lucien bowed respectfully. "I've come to surrender my immortality." Murmurs filled the chamber. Another elder looked toward me. "And the human?" "I love him." The room fell silent. One elderly woman smiled gently. "Then your hearts already possess the first key." Hope flickered inside me. But another elder spoke with a stern expression. "Love alone is not enough." He placed an ancient silver scroll before us. "The Heart of Dawn demands balance." "What kind of balance?" I asked. "Must be matched by something willingly given." Lucien frowned. "What must I sacrifice?" The elder looked directly at me instead. "Not him. You." Every eye in the chamber turned toward me. "If Lucien becomes human, you must surrender the one gift every human treasures." My heartbeat slowed. "What gift?" "Your remaining years." The elder continued calmly. "The ritual will divide your lifespan equally. If destiny grants Damien 60 more years, you will each receive 30. Lucien stood instantly. "No. I refuse." The elders remained silent. I looked at Lucien. 30 years. 30 ordinary years together. Birthdays. Morning coffee. Arguments over furniture. Lazy Sundays. Growing older side by side. It sounded perfect. "I accept." "No." Lucien's voice echoed through the chamber. "You don't understand. I finally understand. I stepped closer until only inches separated us. I'd rather have 30 years with you than 60 without you. Tears filled his crimson eyes. You'd give away half your life? I'd spend every second of it loving you. Without caring who watched, Lucien wrapped his arms around me. He kissed me gently, his lips trembling against mine. It wasn't a kiss of passion. It was gratitude, fear, hope. Every emotion he'd hidden for centuries poured into that single embrace. When we finally separated, the eldest council member smiled. The ritual has accepted your vow. As we prepared to leave, the temple bells suddenly rang. Once. Twice. Then continuously. An elder rushed into the chamber. They're here. Outside, the peaceful sanctuary erupted into chaos. Vampires dressed in crimson armor descended from the surrounding cliffs like shadows. At their center walked a woman wearing an elegant crimson gown embroidered with silver roses. She moved with effortless grace. Her beauty was timeless. Her presence alone made the air feel heavy. The Crimson Queen had arrived. She looked directly at Lucien. My beloved prince. Lucien stepped in front of me. I am no longer your prince. You abandoned your throne. I abandoned a prison. Her crimson eyes shifted toward me. So this fragile human is worth throwing away eternity? I met her gaze without lowering my eyes. I love him. She laughed softly. What an adorable answer. Then her smile disappeared. I wonder if you'll still love him after watching him die. In an instant she crossed the courtyard faster than I could follow. A silver blade flashed toward me. Before it could strike, Lucien intercepted it with his own body. The blade pierced his shoulder. Blood, dark crimson against white marble, splashed across the ground. Lucien! He remained standing despite the wound. His eyes glowed brighter than ever. You will not touch him. The queen looked almost amused. You've become weak. No. Lucien's voice was steady. I've become someone worth protecting. The courtyard exploded into battle. Members of the council fought beside us while the queen's followers attacked from every direction. I stayed close to Lucien, refusing to run despite the danger. The battle seemed endless. Finally, the queen raised her hand. Enough! She looked at us with chilling confidence. The crimson moon rises in 30 days. If you complete the ritual, I lose my prince. So I'll simply make sure neither of you reaches the altar. She vanished into a storm of crimson mist, her army disappearing with her. Silence slowly returned to the ruined sanctuary. That night, I helped bandage Lucien's wounded shoulder. He sat quietly beside the fireplace in our room at the sanctuary. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? For bringing this war into your life. I finished tying the bandage and gently brushed a strand of dark hair away from his face. You didn't bring me a war. You brought me a reason to fight. He looked at me for a long moment before resting his forehead against mine. I've lived for more than 3 centuries. I've possessed castles, wealth, power, immortality. He smiled softly. And I'd trade every one of them for one ordinary lifetime with you. I wrapped my arms around him. Outside, snow began falling over the silent mountains. Inside, beside the warm fire, we shared a slow, lingering kiss, holding each other as though time itself had paused. For a little while, the war disappeared. There was only the gentle crackle of the flames, only the steady rhythm of our hearts. Only 2 men dreaming of a future where love mattered more than eternity. Neither of us knew that the greatest sacrifice was still waiting. The crimson moon was drawing closer, and with it, the final test of our love. The crimson moon rose exactly 30 days later. For an entire month, Lucien and I had traveled in secret, moving between forgotten monasteries, abandoned castles, and hidden sanctuaries while avoiding the Crimson Queen's spies. Every sunrise felt borrowed. Every sunset reminded us that time was running out. Yet somehow, we never stopped loving each other. Even in the middle of danger, Lucien still insisted on making tea every evening. I still teased him about organizing my travel bag better than my executive assistant ever organized my office. Those little moments made the coming battle feel worth surviving. If this was the last chapter of our journey, I wanted every memory to be one we'd never regret. The sanctuary of dawn stood silent beneath the crimson glow of the moon. The white marble temple reflected red light across its ancient pillars, making the entire place look suspended between life and death. The council of elders waited beside the heart of dawn. The crystal was unlike anything I had imagined. It floated above a circular altar, glowing with soft golden light that never flickered despite the cold mountain wind. Father Adrian looked at both of us. Once the ritual begins, neither of you can turn back. Lucien reached for my hand. His fingers were still cool, perhaps for the last time. He smiled gently. Are you afraid? I looked into his crimson eyes. Only of losing you. His voice softened. You never will. The eldest elder stepped forward. The ritual requires truth. No lies. No regrets. He looked at Lucien first. Prince Lucien Ashford. Do you willingly surrender your immortality? Lucien never looked away from me. I do. The crystal shone brighter. The elder turned toward me. Damien Hartwell. Do you willingly surrender half of your remaining life so your beloved may become human? Without hesitation, I answered. Golden light spread across the altar. The heart of dawn began to sing. It wasn't music. It was something older. Something that resonated deep within my soul. Lucien and I stepped into the center of the ancient circle. Symbols carved into the marble floor ignited one after another. Warm light surrounded us. Our hands remained intertwined. I love you, Lucien whispered. I loved you before I understood you. I loved you after I learned your secret. And I'll love you every day after today. Tears gathered in his eyes. I've waited centuries to hear those words. I leaned forward. Our lips met in a slow, heartfelt kiss. Not desperate. Not hurried. Simply two souls promising each other that no matter what happened next, this moment would always belong to us. When we separated, our foreheads rested together. For the first time since we'd met, his heartbeat echoed faintly against my own. Then the temple shook. A deafening explosion shattered the western gate. Stone pillars collapsed. Crimson mist flooded into the sanctuary. The Crimson Queen had arrived. She walked calmly through the destruction, her crimson gown untouched by dust or debris. Behind her stood hundreds of loyal vampires. The council immediately formed a protective circle around the ritual. You still have time to stop this, the queen called. She looked directly at Lucien. Return to me. Rule beside me. Become king. Lucien squeezed my hand. I've already chosen. I choose Damien. The queen's expression hardened. So be it. The battle began. The sanctuary erupted into chaos as the council defended the altar against the invading vampires. Ancient magic illuminated the night sky. Silver blades clashed. Crimson flames burst across the temple courtyard. I wasn't a warrior. I was a businessman. But I refused to stand aside while others protected the person I loved. Using nothing more than courage and determination, I helped guide wounded elders away from the fighting and shielded the ritual whenever I could. Lucien remained at my side, protecting me whenever danger came too close. Even while surrounded by enemies, his first instinct was always to make sure I was safe. The Crimson Queen reached the altar herself. Her power overwhelmed nearly everyone standing before her. She looked at Lucien with genuine sadness. You could have ruled forever. You traded eternity. For 30 years. Lucien answered calmly. 30 years with the one I love is worth more than endless centuries alone. For the first time, the queen hesitated. Something flickered across her face. a memory, a regret, a loneliness buried beneath 1,000 years of power. She whispered almost to herself, "I once believed that too." Suddenly another vampire commander ignored the queen's hesitation. He charged directly toward me with a silver spear. Everything happened in seconds. Lucien saw him. I saw Lucien. Without thinking, he threw himself between us. The spear pierced his chest. Lucien! Time seemed to stop. He collapsed into my arms. His breathing became shallow. Dark crimson blood stained both our clothes. I dropped to my knees beside him. "No! No! Stay with me." He smiled weakly. "I promised. I'd protect you." "You idiot," I whispered through tears. "I never asked you to die for me. You didn't have to. I wanted." He reached up with trembling fingers and gently touched my cheek. "My greatest miracle was meeting you." Tears blurred my vision. I held him close. "You don't get to leave. We're supposed to grow old together. We're supposed to argue about breakfast. You promised." He gave a faint laugh. "I remember." I kissed him softly. "I love you." "I know," he whispered. "And I love you. More than eternity." The heart of dawn suddenly blazed with brilliant golden light. The crystal responded not to magic, but to sacrifice freely given for love. Golden energy surrounded Lucien's body. The spear dissolved into dust. The ancient curse began breaking apart like shattered glass. The crimson glow in Lucien's eyes slowly faded. His fangs disappeared. The coldness in his skin vanished. Then, for the very first time in over 300 years, his heart beat like an ordinary human's. Steady. Warm. Alive. The elders looked on in amazement. "It worked. The curse is broken." Lucien slowly opened his eyes. Confusion filled his face. Then he looked at me. "Damien." His voice sounded different. Gentler. Warmer. He placed my hand against his chest. "Can you feel it?" I smiled through uncontrollable tears. His heartbeat. Strong. Human. Beautiful. "I can." The Crimson Queen watched in complete silence. She had lost. Not because she was weaker, but because love had accomplished something power never could. She lowered her head. "Go." Lucien stared at her. "I'm releasing you from your royal bloodline." Her voice carried centuries of exhaustion. "Live the life I never could." Without another word, the war was over. As dawn approached, Father Adrian led us to the eastern balcony of the sanctuary. The first rays of sunlight slowly crossed the mountains. Lucien stood beside me. For the first time in centuries, he didn't hide. He didn't flinch. Golden sunlight touched his face. He closed his eyes and smiled. "It's warm," he whispered. "I've dreamed about this for so long." I slipped my fingers between his. Together we watched the sunrise. Neither of us spoke. There were no more curses, no more kingdoms, no more ancient wars. Only two men standing beneath the first sunrise they could truly share. As the light filled the valley, I reached into my coat pocket. Inside rested a small velvet box. I smiled to myself. The journey wasn't over yet. There was still one promise left to keep. And under the warmth of Lucien's very first sunrise, I decided it was finally time to ask the question that would change both our lives forever. The first sunrise of Lucien's new life painted the mountains in shades of gold and amber. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We simply stood together on the eastern balcony of the Sanctuary of Dawn. Our fingers intertwined as the morning light gently warmed our faces. Lucien closed his eyes and smiled. "I never imagined sunlight would feel like this." His voice carried a quiet wonder, like a child discovering the world for the first time. "It isn't painful. It isn't frightening. It's Beautiful. I couldn't stop looking at him. For the first time since we'd met, warmth had returned to his cheeks. His heartbeat was steady beneath his chest, his breathing calm, his smile brighter than any I had ever seen. He was finally human, and somehow, he had never looked more extraordinary. I reached into the pocket of my coat. For weeks, I had carried a small velvet box, waiting for a future I wasn't sure we'd ever reach. Now, the future was standing right in front of me. Lucien. He turned toward me. Yes. I slowly lowered myself onto one knee. His eyes widened instantly. I've spent my entire life chasing success. I thought power, money, and achievement would make me feel complete. They never did. I opened the box. Inside rested a simple platinum ring engraved with 2 words. Until sunrise. The day you walked into my office, I believed you were simply my assistant. The day I kissed you, I realized you had become my heart. And the day I almost lost you, I understood that every tomorrow only matters if you're standing beside me. Tears shimmered in Lucien's eyes. So, I smiled. Lucien Ashford, will you marry me? For a heartbeat, he simply stared. Then tears slipped freely down his cheeks. After 300 years, I finally get to hear someone ask me that. He laughed through his tears. Yes. Yes, Damien. 1,000 times yes. I slipped the ring onto his finger. He immediately pulled me into his arms. We kissed beneath the morning sun. Slowly, tenderly, with the quiet certainty that neither of us had to fear tomorrow anymore. 3 months later, Hartwell Industries looked very different. Employees hurried between meetings. Phones rang. Assistants organized impossible schedules. Some things never changed. Lucien sat at the desk outside my office, reviewing documents with his usual elegance. Only now, he occasionally complained about needing coffee every morning. I smiled every time. Human problems? I teased. He looked up with a playful grin. I was promised ordinary life. No one mentioned paperwork. I laughed. You wanted humanity. I forgot humans have taxes. I definitely should have remained immortal. Oh. I leaned over his desk. Too late. He gently tugged my tie until I leaned closer. I suppose I'll survive. He kissed me briefly. A few nearby employees politely looked away, pretending not to notice. Neither of us cared. Life became wonderfully ordinary. We cooked dinner together. Lucien insisted on learning recipes he'd never been able to enjoy properly because food had once been little more than a memory. His first attempt at baking bread nearly set off every smoke detector in the apartment. It looked easier in the cookbook, he protested. It also said not to forget the timer. I was distracted. By what? You. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the mixing bowl. Those became my favorite moments. Not the dramatic adventures. Not the impossible battles. Just quiet evenings together. Autumn arrived. Golden leaves covered the city streets. One afternoon we visited the cemetery where Lucien had quietly buried the diary that had accompanied him through 3 centuries. He placed a single white lily beside the small memorial stone. I don't need to carry my past anymore, he whispered. I slipped my hand into his. You'll always remember. Yes. But now. He smiled at me. I finally have something better to look forward to. We left hand in hand, carrying only hope. Winter brought our wedding. Friends, colleagues, Father Adrian, and the Council of Elders gathered in the restored gardens of the Sanctuary of Dawn. Fresh snow covered the mountains. Crystal lanterns illuminated the pathways. Soft music echoed beneath the open sky. As I waited at the end of the aisle, my heart pounded harder than it ever had during any business negotiation. Then Lucien appeared. He wore a tailored ivory suit that reflected the winter sunlight. No crown. No royal robes. No symbol of ancient power. just the man I loved. He walked toward me with tears already shining in his eyes. "You look nervous," he whispered when he reached me. "I've negotiated with world leaders. They're less intimidating." He laughed. "So are you." "I disagree." The ceremony was simple, honest, perfect. When it came time for our vows, I looked into his warm brown eyes, the same eyes that had once glowed crimson beneath endless nights. "I promise to love you in ordinary mornings and extraordinary moments. I promise to grow old beside you. I promise that every sunrise we share will remind me how lucky I am." Lucien took both of my hands. "I've lived through centuries. I've watched kingdoms rise and disappear. I've seen history change. But nothing has ever compared to the happiness of becoming simply your husband." Our guests applauded through happy tears. The officiant smiled warmly. "You may kiss." I didn't hesitate. Our kiss was gentle, joyful, and filled with every promise we'd fought to keep. When we finally pulled apart, applause echoed through the snowy valley. For the first time in centuries, Lucien belonged to no kingdom, only to the life we were building together. Years passed. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just the way life was meant to. Our hair gradually carried hints of silver. Fine lines appeared beside our smiles. Every birthday became another victory. Every anniversary became another miracle. Sometimes we'd sit together on our apartment balcony, watching the sunrise over the city with cups of coffee in our hands. Lucien would rest his head against my shoulder. "I used to fear time," he smiled. "Now it's my favorite gift." One spring morning, as golden light filled the sky, I looked at the man beside me. He was no longer an immortal prince. He was no longer my assistant. He was my husband, my best friend, my home. I gently squeezed his hand. "Any regrets?" He laughed softly. "Only one." I blinked. "What's that?" He looked at me with the same smile that had stolen my heart years ago. "I wish I'd accepted the job sooner." I laughed until tears filled my eyes. Then I kissed him one more time beneath another beautiful sunrise. Looking back, I realized something. People always say love lasts forever. They're wrong. Forever is too abstract, too distant. Love isn't measured by endless years. It's measured by every morning you choose each other again. And if someone asked me whether giving away half my life had been worth it, I'd answer without hesitation. Every heartbeat, every sunrise, every kiss. Every ordinary day beside Lucien was worth more than an eternity without him. That is the story of how a lonely CEO fell in love with his assistant, helped him reclaim his humanity, and discovered that the greatest fortune in the world was never found in wealth or power. It was found in a warm hand, a shared sunrise, and the simple words we whispered to each other every single day. "I'm home."